Welcome back, guys, or if you're new to my channel, this is Automotive Anonymous, and that's the 2026 slightly refreshed Honda CR-V, but more importantly, this is basically the base model. It's an EX, so it's technically the second lowest trim level, but this one has no options other than the platinum white pearl paint, which looks absolutely fantastic in person, and after months of trying to find an LX trim level, I just can't. So this seems to be about the most basic CR-V for the current generation that I have ever driven, that I have ever found, and most likely the cheapest one that you guys are going to find as well. So let's dive right into this, do a quick walk around and see how this compares to the more loaded out expensive trim levels, but also how it compares to the competition. First of all, huge thanks to Larry H. Miller Honda in Boise, Idaho for letting me borrow this EX for the day, but also huge thanks to our channel sponsor, Lasfit, but more on them in just a few minutes. If you get anything out of this video today, please give it a like, comment your thoughts and opinions below, subscribe if you haven't already, and also comment below and let me know how this new camera and audio is doing. I'm basically just talking through the iPhone 17 Pro. There's no microphone added onto this one. This is just the basic filter. I want to know what you guys' thoughts are on it. Let's dive right in. I think it's important to know that the pricing difference between the EX and the LX is only about $2,000. This does have the $450 paint option, which is the platinum white pearl, which I highly recommend. But beyond that, it's just destination and delivery. So even though this one basic MSRP starts at about $33,000, or roughly $2,000 more than the LX trim level, after destination delivery and options, it is about $36,500. But keep in mind, if you reference Automotive Anonymous to Clint at Honda Boise, you will get a really good deal below MSRP. They also ship anywhere in the country, so keep that in mind. But at the end of the day, this is only about $2,000 more than the LX. And for about $2,000, you actually get a lot of options. You get everything from proximity key features to a sunroof, to heated cloth front seats, to these larger 18-inch wheels rather than the 17-inch wheels, which on the website, Honda USA, do look very similar to this 18-inch design. But you also get more safety. You get blind spot monitoring and rear cross traffic alert. So for $2,000, I feel like you get a lot of stuff on the EX compared to the LX. But if you don't need any of those features, just imagine that they don't exist because they are pretty easy to overlook in this platform. But for about $2,000, I think that the price premium of this is well worth it for most people. But beyond those features, the rest of this vehicle is going to be very identical to the LX. So under the hood, this is a non-hybrid. So you have the 1.5 liter turbo direct injection 4-cylinder. It is 1.5 liters of displacement. You can see the coil packs up top, the turbo under the heat shield on the front of the engine, the air intake manifold on the back of the engine. It does take 0W20. You have a bracket right there holding it on. The serpentine belt, the alternator, it's all down there. The air intake in the box, the filter, it's actually pretty small looking. But at the end of the day, this only makes about 190 horsepower at the peak RPM and 179 pound-feet of torque. So I will say 0 to 60s on this in my area at about a mile above sea level. It is a couple seconds slower than a hybrid because the hybrid not only has about 14 more peak horsepower, but it has more likely in the ballpark of 60 to 70 more peak pound-feet of torque, especially at a lower RPM. And it has more displacement. Even though this has a turbo, the other one has a couple electric motors, and substantially, that one is a lot faster than this. But this is still a fun vehicle to drive, and this is basically like the detuned 1.5 liter engine found in the Civic Si. So it's not necessarily a bad power plant, but it is on the lower middle grade of where the power numbers are for a compact crossover like this. You have the battery, the rest of the reservoirs, and it looks like you have just a little bit of protection around the air filter and where the extra intake can go through the grille, and that's pretty cool. Of course, looks are subjective, but I do think overall Honda actually did a really nice job designing the rear end of the CR-V. Seems to be a good balance between form and function. There's not really anything that you don't want. And for this being basically the base model, but having upgraded wheels, having a few upgraded interior bits for creature comforts and technology, you're really not missing anything. You don't have crazy amounts of black plastic cladding or anything that you wouldn't find on a more expensive trim level of the CR-V. And in this white paint color, it does look like a nice black, white, and a little bit of chrome elegant rear end, and I like this a lot. You even have a painted shark fin antenna. This doesn't have the roof rails. You can see where those would go, but at least it's a nice black trim piece that does match the black trim piece added onto the spoiler in the back. You also have the third brake light, the rear wiper blade. The Honda emblems are more of a chrome finish, and I do think it's interesting. Something you should know is that this has the real-time all-wheel drive system. That is more of a slip and grip system. It's not a torque vectoring system. It is not as advanced as the more expensive, larger Hondas with their iVTM4, their current generation of that system. So this does have all-wheel drive, but all-wheel drive is not always created equally. This is one of the lower end systems, although it's better than some of the other ones like the RAV4 hybrid system that I have, where that's only all-wheel drive because of an electric motor. But if we look at the back, this is not a power liftgate. When I pop the hatch, there's a lot to talk about back here. First of all, it is really interesting how many degrees the back seats can move. So then depending on if you have the hybrid or the non-hybrid, for if you have the battery pack back here, this one does not have a battery pack because it's a non-hybrid. So you do have a temporary spare tire. It is just a donut. It's not a full size, but then you have your scissor jack, your tire changing tools, and you actually have some really good insulation on the bottom of this CR-V, whereas some other vehicles, you could just see the sheet metal and the seam sealer. So good job, Honda, for insulating this a little bit better than some cheaper vehicles. You also have an LED light, you have a bag clip, you have a 12 volt right there. You could have a privacy shade added on too. But back here, when the seats are up, depending on how they're configured, depending on if it's a hybrid or a non-hybrid, you have 34 to 39 cubic feet of room, which for a compact crossover is fantastic because the majority of them are closer to 30 feet. So this is the middle upper class for how much cargo capacity you have. And then when you fold down the seats, you have 76, which again is just about class leading. But unfortunately, there is a huge hump. Part of the reason that this is able to get such good cargo capacity is at the sacrifice of a flat laying second row. So are you going to be able to car camp back here? I mean, maybe. You're going to have to really accommodate that quite well because that is several inches of difference in height. So keep that in mind, but overall, this is a lot of storage, and if you're never gonna car camp back here, it probably isn't ever gonna matter. But one thing that really matters is the sponsor of today's video, Lasfit. Look at these floor mats. They're not yet installed. These are the cloth mats, and if you want to get the fancier all-weather mats, you're gonna have to pay a few $100s if you buy them through Honda. And even if you buy them through Honda, they're not gonna be as good as the Lasfit mats, which you can get for a whole lot less. For instance, if you use my discount code of AA20 on anything you want on Lasfit's website, you get 20% off an already very competitive deal. So the full price floor mats as of filming this today, for the front, for the middle, and for the cargo mat in the rear, you might only have to pay $190 before tax, anything like that. But after my discount code, that price is gonna be closer to $150, probably about half of what you'd have to pay from the factory, while getting a thicker, better quality, better mat that actually has better protection, more side support, higher walls so your Slurpee and your milkshakes aren't gonna spill when they fall on the ground. They're not gonna get into the carpet. They're not gonna get mixed around in the floorboards. They're gonna stay on the mat, which then you can easily pull out, wipe off, spray down, do whatever you want to clean it out. So huge thanks to today's sponsor, Lasfit, for building such an affordable product, which also brings quality because they're not the biggest weather mat company. They don't have the same overhead, so you're not paying people to do things that are unrelated to the actual work, the actual product that you need. You're just paying for a quality product. And I'm so glad that Lasfit decided to sponsor this video today. So check them out, use the link in the description below, and thank you guys so much. And big thanks to Lasfit. I think this vehicle really looks good from about every angle. It just looks simple. It doesn't look totally like a jelly bean, but it's also not as aggressive as a lot of other vehicles are trying to be, especially all of those new Chevy crossovers. I think the Honda is a really good balance between a good looking vehicle, but also one that's gonna age well. And in 10 years, it's probably gonna look just as good as it does today. But one thing that we should talk about is how awesome these back seats are. The back door panels not only feel really solid, and I mean, this was a Canadian built vehicle. The VIN does start with a 2, but these door panels also open probably biggest in class, or just about nearly 90 degrees. So it's gonna be super easy to get child safety seats, to get pet kennels, to get anything you want, any big, bulky, weird shaped items in the back, because those door panels are not gonna hinder you. For example, on my Toyota RAV4, the door panel literally only opens to like that. That's insane. In person, it makes a bigger difference than maybe on camera, but seriously consider that. Just think about that if you're gonna have a lot of things coming in and out of your family compact crossover. And then these seats, they can literally get up to 90 degrees, which is pretty interesting. So we can recline them quite a bit. Part of that difference though is probably because of the hump. So when we lay them all the way flat, you can see they are elevated quite a bit, but like all Hondas, this has all of the safety connections for your child safety seats. You also have the anchors right there. They're easily exposed. And these seats, the cloth, the thread count, whatever it is, they feel very high quality. Like they're not gonna get aged and damaged very easily. And then at 5'11", I easily slide into the back of this. I do wish there was a mat pocket. If you want that, you're gonna have to sit on the other side. But you have vents. You have USB Type-C plugins. You have plenty of room, and at 5'11", I have about that much room above my head, which is actually pretty decent. I can just barely see the small size power moonroof that's a part of this EX trim level. But then you also have an armrest that has the cup holders where they should be down the middle. So you can use it as an armrest for you and your passenger and use the armrests. You also have LED lights on this one, which is really nice. And overall, this is just a nice, spacious place to be. For being a CR-V, this is about as good as it's gonna get. We just have to hop into the front. I'll show you what it's like to sit in your driver's seat if you are the person considering purchasing this. But before we do that and then wrap up this video, I want to mention that these are expected to be a 5-star crash test rated vehicle and a top safety pick, just like they were for the 2025 model year. As I film this today, it is still September, so these have not yet officially been rated for the new generation or the new mid-generational refresh with this new model year. But keep in mind, this has really good safety features, really bright LED headlights, a bunch of sensors, blind spot monitoring, turn signals on the mirror, backup, camera, all the basics as well, a bunch of airbags, knee airbag, all that stuff. But it also has adaptive cruise and lane keep assist, which kind of like I mentioned with the all-wheel drive earlier, they're not created equally, and the lane keep assist actually works really good on this vehicle, better than my Toyota RAV4, better than a lot of other compact crossovers. So keep that in mind when you test drive these vehicles. Check out the safety features, because the Honda, this current generation, actually has very competent safety features, and that's one thing that I really like about this platform. But inside the driver door panel, it also feels like a pretty solid door. The door panel, it opens up wide, maybe not quite as wide as the back though, but in most cases, you're not putting anything up front other than yourself, so you really don't need it to open any wider than that. Plus, they open so wide, you already have to be careful that you don't hit the cars next to you. The door panel materials, they are kind of the materials that are gonna age well, last a long time, but they don't feel unnecessarily cheap or anything like that. You even have what feels like a leather wrapped, nice stitched armrest. I like that a lot, but just a basic speaker, basic bottle and snack pocket, your basic controls right here. But you actually have power options for the seat. It is heated, which is really nice. And again, the bolstering, the side support on this is actually really comfortable for a cloth seat. It just feels really well made. It feels really dense, if that makes any sense. The bolstering is going to let you slide around a little bit if you take corners fast, but for most body types, I think that's going to be comfortable. Remember the basic floor mats that come on basically every new vehicle. It's not very protective. They usually barely cover the dead pedal. They don't cover much up there, so when your feet slip off the pedals and you get dirty footprints up there, or when you spill things and they roll off the side and get underneath the mat and then you forget about them, another reason to consider Lasfit. But otherwise, the EX has blank buttons, has ventilation, turn signal lighting stock. You have the tilt and telescope features, non-heated, non-leather wrapped, just a plastic polymer type of steering wheel. But you have all of your safety buttons on it. You have very good storage in this, surprisingly. And when you fire it up with the push button start, which this thing even has remote start on the remote. I love that feature. Even has all digital displays. They look pretty good. You're not really missing anything. You have Android Auto, Apple CarPlay, no heads-up display or anything. But honestly, you don't need that. That's just going to cost more money. The horn, it's actually really loud, but it is kind of high-pitched. And then you have your adaptive cruise control settings, your voice and volume, and then physical HVAC controls. It is kind of interesting when the vehicle's off and that button is not lit up. You can't actually see that it's heated. But in my time with the vehicle, the heated feature seems to work pretty adequately. And then HVAC, plugins galore. You even have the wireless charger on the base model. The backup camera, clarity is good. Trajectory lines do move. You can see where the hatch would open to with that dashed line. And then down here, you have different drive modes. Even on this one, you have 3 drive modes. No sport mode or anything, so that's pretty cool. You have auto vehicle, brake hold, auto vehicle hold, electronic parking brake, hill descent, and auto start stop like every other new vehicle. You have some cup holders where they should be. You can fit very tall drinks right here, unlike the Mazdas where the cup holders are basically underneath the dashboard and you're limited on the height. You have a pencil tray, and you have actually a really big center armrest right there. LED lights up top. You have a place to store your glasses or hide some treats. incandescent light, if you want that upgraded, check out Lasfit. They also have a lot of lighting upgrades. With that said, let's turn this off. We'll hop out and we'll finish up this video. My final thoughts of the 2026 Honda CR-V EX is after a few months of looking for an LX, ever since I reviewed the other several CR-Vs that I have on my channel with a full review, I wasn't able to find one. There was one several hours away. I'm pretty sure it was already claimed for, so I wasn't able to get it. This is actually the only EX out of 30 Honda Civics that Larry H. Miller Honda Boise currently has on their lot for the new generation, the new model year. So these are hard to find as they are, let alone an LX. So just imagine some of those features aren't there. And this is what you're gonna get. This is gonna be the cheapest $33,000 to $36,500 Honda CR-V. Remember, if you reference Automotive Anonymous to Clint, one of the sales managers at Honda, you're gonna get a really good deal. I don't know what that is. You're gonna have to discuss that between the two of you, but I recommend them. They're a fun dealership to work with. I recommend this car. It's a fun car to work with, to drive, to enjoy. Honestly, it feels like a very good Honda. And in today's market, I know $36,000 before discount is not cheap, but honestly, the CR-V has kept up with inflation. If anything, it's a much better vehicle at a lower equivalent price tag than when these first came out 30 years ago in the mid-90s. So the Honda proposition on value, I think, is really good. But don't take my word for it. Test drive the competition. Test drive a bunch of compact crossovers. Heck, even drive some other vehicles in other classes to make sure that this is the right vehicle for you. Before you spend your hard-earned money, make sure it's the right vehicle and you're happy with your decision. Anyways, guys, if you got anything out of this video, please consider liking it. Comment your thoughts and opinions below. Subscribe if you haven't already. And again, huge thanks to today's channel sponsor, Lasfit. They make really good products, and that's why we use them as a company for our own vehicles. With that said, I wish you guys the best. I hope you take care. See ya.